Okay, this is a hard topic. Landlords, how long do you keep your tenants for and why? Stay tuned. We're going to talk about it today.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Cleo Whittier, expert property manager of 72 years.
Please don't make me 72 just yet. I'm not ready for that. Good
72
morning.
plus 18, 90, whatever the maths are.
How are you?
Yeah, good you.
Good, good. Always ready for the taboo topics that we like to cover in property management.
This one's hard to talk about because it's people's homes, and we don't want them to leave their homes, but we do want them to leave their homes where for sometimes for good reasons. 5 to 7 years is the sweet spot. We have these discussions with landlords, and tell me how the discussions go.
Look, the sentiment in our day-to-day life with a tenant that's been there long term is that they're reliable, and the owner's mindset is, oh, they've been such good tenants, I don't want to lose them. They're reliable. I know it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So in that regard, it becomes almost like an emotional transaction when you go past that 6-year threshold. And as a property manager, in order for us to explain to the landlord that it's a good thing to sometimes move your tenant along and do a refresh of the property, it's not easy, and
No.
a lot of landlords don't want to do it.
Like we had the discussion yesterday with a landlord that's been living in Singapore, had the properties, 3 houses for over 20 years. And and some of the, I guess where we are heavily transactional. So we see across, like for people that don't know that are watching, we're one of the biggest property managers in the country, single office, 2,000 properties. So we're seeing a lot and the goods and bads of what people do. And our advice to her was like, look, if you really could cycle out your long-term tenants, some of, I think one of them was with her for 10 years or 12 years. It's like, and she's like, how does that work and why? And we're like, well, the property falls into disrepair and the actual value of the property begins to erode when cosmetic works, scalable cosmetic works and maintenance are not done. Whilst the tenants is there, generally can't be done, but you need to give it a really good scrub and a rub and a paint and a polish and a this and a that to maintain that, and then it equalises rent. But I think most importantly, sometimes there's that emotional side of it as well, where an owner just wants to keep the tenant for that reason. The tenant feels like they've paid the owner's mortgage for all that time, and I think that it almost becomes a little bit, they almost become like family a little bit.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit entitled, and it then becomes difficult to bring the property to market value in rent. You can't go from a 10-year tenure to you're paying, say, $900 a week, and now market saying $1,600. Boom, there's like a $500 rent increase. You just can't do that. Whereas if you were to, and you probably couldn't anyway, because like you said, the maintenance is compounded over time, that it is in a need of needing to be revamped to get to that market rent. So really there isn't really many options in order to do that. So
The
land
tenant goes,
tax.
this is my home.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's hard with routine inspections as well. You do tend to notice all those niggly things that a new tenant would never let slide. They wouldn't live with it. They would make the landlord do that job. Whereas a tenant that knows, oh well, I'm paying $200-300 under market value, I don't care about that rotten fascia, or I don't care that that toilet leaks ever so lightly for the last 2 years. They just live with it. And it has happened when this exact experience, a unit in Kingsway, the tenant moved out after being there 12 years. He was in the mines. Landlord had the most easiest tenancy, no maintenance requests, nothing. Then when the tenant moved out and a new tenant moved in, everything was broken. And the landlord was like, what? Like, did you not do inspections? What about the final inspections? Like, well, we didn't know because he never reported anything. He didn't say the dishwasher was broken, the lights didn't work, this didn't work, like the aircon. All these things came down to the new tenant moving in, and then the owner, was unsatisfied with the new tenant, but it really wasn't the new tenant's fault. That's how the property was. So, in a way, having that tenant that long, yes, the rent was, stable. There was no reletting costs, but the reletting costs aren't really that much when you think about it. We charge 1 week's rent, and the
Yeah,
advertising and everything's covered through the office.
and I think the scariest part of these of a long term tenancy is when that cause with these some of these items you've mentioned actually become structural items, and that's when it gets really expensive. And they sort of can almost be a little bit invisible at times. They can be covered, they can be masked, and they actually can become heavily structural. So I think. Sometimes tenants are a little bit hard on a property in terms of I want this maintained or I want this done, and that's often a really good thing. And if you'd think to yourself, if you had, a tenant that said nothing forever, it's a good thing. Not necessarily. So maintaining your asset, looking at, making sure it's cosmetically great, it's sure it's going to get the best value when that time comes for relet. You should be massaging that and kneading that over time, a little bit like dough with bread. You should be just giving it little frequent things, and then that big birthday every 3 or 5 years if a tenancy moves out. How long is the average tenancy?
Probably about 2 to 3, I would say, in our market. But ideally, like you said, between 5 and 6 is the ultimate, completion of a tenancy cycle if you are going to, keep your investment fresh and making money for you. But typically after 3 years, I think you either turn into a long-term tenant, or you're churning, you're moving for work or you're doing something else. It's typically that time.
Well, that's everything, Claire. Thank you so much. I think the message. Look, and we do have our unicorns. That we are talking on average. We do have our unicorns that are in for very long times that maintain the properties very well. The owner maintains those long-term tenancy properties very well. Yes, granted, but we're talking about sort of an average on balance. The principle and the advice of ours would be to give the property a really nice little birthday every 5 to 7 years. I had a new house, NIMBY, which was built 10 years ago, and the tenant, just long term tenant, we had a tenant there for 6 years, 7 years, I think, and yeah, they moved out. There was so much work to do on a brand new house. On a brand new house, right?
Even
So
brand new.
yeah, and none of it was the tenant's fault, but there was just, there was, thank God for our mums, to get in there and spot this and spot that and scrub this and fix that and and run that process for us, because it wasn't
No one
something
has the
just
time.
yeah, it wasn't something a property manager only could do. And I think that's important. It's not the property manager's property, right? So I've got the best property manager, one of the best property managers in the world, looking after the property. And it's like I didn't put it on the property manager to say I need this done. Why wasn't this done? Why wasn't that done? I rolled my sleeves up, got down there and fixed everything, because it'd been 10 years and I hadn't spent a cent on the asset, and the rent jumped. The rent went from I think 850, 900, up to 1,020 from those works that were done. And that was an example of us cycling through a tenant that was relatively long term.
Yeah, and as you said, when a tenant's in the property, you don't get to see a lot of things that need doing because it's masked by, the tenant being, really house proud and all the beautiful furnishings and everything. But then when they leave, you're like, oh my God, that wall, why didn't they tell us about that? Like, and to be fair, most people on the beaches are working. They're not in their homes all day long. They're out. They come home. It's often afternoon. They're not really residing in the properties to, tick off everything all the time. Shout out to the mums, Mother's Day coming up. I just wanted to, obviously, with an experience I've just had, all those mums that are in hospital at the moment looking after sick kids. I don't know how you do it. I had an experience with my son over this last week, and I'm just in awe of all of the mums in hospital that, this weekend I hope they get to be outside in the sunshine with their beautiful kids. So, yeah, shout out to the mums.
Shout out to mums and the working mums and the mums and the non-working mums and the every mums, all
And the
mums,
dad mums. And the
love you
dad
mums.
mums.
The dad mums, the non-binary mums, just all the mums, love the mums.
Yeah, I think so too.
See you, legend. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.